Greetings, brothers and sisters. You know who it is, Dion de Belmont from the illustrious Noble House of Belmont, and I have another video for you. This one is speaking regarding the Treaty of Paris of 1783. I always like referencing this treaty because many of you don't realize, especially if you're in the United States, that this treaty, which is an instrument, a lawful document, and considered the supreme law of the land in the United States based off of the United States Constitution, is imperative that you know about it, because without it, the United States will not be able to exist. So for those of you who are just now getting the opportunity to hear this information, please like, share, subscribe to the channel. Also, for those of you who see the ticker down at the bottom of the screen, if you feel generous, contribute to our church, which is the English Church, aka now known as the Third Temple English Church of England, headed by the de jure King of England, King Clifford Jefferson from the Royal House of Plantagenet. And we need any and all assistance to help us do this great intellectual work, because we are in a state of emergency within the Kingdom of England. I digress, and let the narrators of the video go ahead and give you a quick synopsis regarding the Treaty of Paris. All right.
3rd of September 1783, the Treaty of Paris, which ended the American Revolutionary War, was signed by representatives of King George III of Great Britain and representatives of the United States of America. The American Revolutionary War, also known as the American War of Independence, began on the 19th of April 1775 between Great Britain and her 13 colonies that had declared independence as the United States of America. The conflict lasted for over 8 years from its first shot to the signing of the treaty. The Americans, having formed an alliance with France in 1778, had accepted the surrender of British troops under Charles Cornwallis on the 17th of October 1781. This resulted from the decisive victory at Yorktown by a combined force of American troops led by General George Washington and French army troops under the Comte de Rochambeau. A vote of no confidence in the British government of Lord North soon led to the creation of a new government that began peace negotiations in April 1782. By the end of the summer, the Americans had begun to negotiate directly with the British Prime Minister, Lord Shelburne, a move that forced France to agree a separate peace with Britain, and which had the effect of weakening the relationship between the two former allies. The treaty was finally drafted on the 30th of November 1782 and signed the following year. It formally recognized that the United States would be free, sovereign, and independent. The land granted under the agreement to the United States by Britain has subsequently been described as exceedingly generous. However, in an excellent piece of diplomatic prediction by Lord Shelburne, this went on to provide Britain with a fast-growing and lucrative trading partner.
So what we were just able to verify and see from the video was that the Treaty of Paris of 1783 was the document, once again, that gave the United States the ability to exist as a free and sovereign entity within this territory. Prior to that, this territory was known as Crown Land from the British Crown, because the British Crown were utilizing the rights and the prerogatives of the English Crown. Because what did they do? They enslaved the English people going all the way back to 1066. But we're not going to talk about that in this video. Now we're going to go ahead and go through the Treaty of Paris of 1783. So for those of you who are right now privy to a computer or your phone or any device that allow you to check out the internet, you can take a look at what they call the British American Diplomacy Treaty, aka the Treaty of Paris 1783, on Yale Law website, and you can actually go to avalonlaw.com and it'll bring it up. You can type it into Google or any other search engine that you feel comfortable in utilizing. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this treaty. Please like, share, subscribe to the channel once again if you had not had the opportunity to, and let's begin. So it says British-American diplomacy, the Paris Peace Treaty of September 30th, 1783. The definitive Treaty of Peace, 1783. In the name of the most holy and undivided Trinity, it having pleased the divine providence to dispose the hearts of the most serene and most potent Prince George III, by the grace of God, King of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, Defender of the Faith, Duke of Brunswick and Lunenburg, Arch-Treasurer and Prince-Elector of the Holy Roman Empire, and of the United States of America, to forget all past misunderstandings and differences that have unhappily interrupted the good correspondence and friendship which they mutually wish to restore, and to establish such a beneficial and satisfactory intercourse between the two countries upon the ground of reciprocal advantages and mutual convenience as may promote and secure to both perpetual peace and harmony, and having for this desirable end already laid the foundation of peace and reconciliation by the provisional articles signed at Paris on the 30th of November 1782, by the commissioners empowered on each part, which articles were agreed to be inserted in the constitute the treaty of peace proposed to be concluded between the Crown of Great Britain and the said United States, but which treaty was not to be concluded until terms of peace should be agreed upon between Great Britain and France, and His Britannic Majesty should be ready to conclude such treaty accordingly. And the treaty between Great Britain and France having since been concluded, His Britannic Majesty and the United States of America, in order to carry into the full effect the provisional articles above mentioned, accorded to the tenure thereof, have constituted and appointed, that is to say, His Britannic Majesty on his part, David Hartley, Esquire, member of the Parliament of Great Britain, and the said United States on their part, John Adams, Esquire, late a Commissioner of the United States of America at the Court of Versailles, late Delegate in Congress from the state of Massachusetts, and Chief Justice of the said state, the Minister Plenipotentiary of the said United States, to their high mightinesses, the State General of the United Netherlands, Benjamin Franklin, Esquire, late Delegate in Congress from the state of Pennsylvania, President of the Convention of the said state, and Minister Plenipotentiary from the United States of America at the Court of Versailles, John J. Esquire, late President of Congress and Chief Justice of the State of New York, and Minister Plenipotentiary from the said United States at the Court of Madrid, to be plenipotentiaries for the concluding and signing the present definitive treaty, who, after having reciprocally communicated their respective full powers, have agreed upon and confirmed the following articles. So what we just read was the preamble of the Treaty of Paris. It was letting you know the position and the title of the King of Great Britain, King George III, and letting you know that all of his territories that he was considered either a prince or the head of, and in this case you can say Great Britain, he was claiming France as well, Ireland, Defender of the Faith, Duke of Brunswick and Lunenburg, the Arch-Treasurer and Prince-Elector of the Holy Roman Empire and of the United States. So once again, without the signing of this document, the United States would not have the ability to exist as a free and sovereign entity, because they were granted the ability to exist by the King, King George III. And this is the British monarch. The British monarchs aren't the same as the English monarchs. Please pay attention for future references. Now let's go ahead and get into these articles. And according to the United States, they want to say that only Article 1 is in effect. But the fact that there's still errors here, you cannot dispute the other articles within this treaty without a proper ratification by both parties to approve it. All right, so Article 1 says, His Britannic Majesty acknowledges the said United States viz. New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island Providence Plantations, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia to be free, sovereign, and independent states, that he treats with them as such, and for himself, his heirs, and successors relinquishes all claims to the government, propriety, and territorial rights of the same, and every part thereof. Pause. So he's saying that he's relinquishing, and we speaking in regards King George III, he's relinquishing his claim and giving it up to the new to those who he granted it to, in this case the states or the several states. And he's saying he also is relinquishes this via for himself, his heirs and successors. The key, himself, his heirs, and his successors. This has nothing to do with the subjects who were here prior to him taking over the position of the head of the trust. In this case, we're going to call it the English crown, because this territory was English land, or land that was pretty much chartered by the monarchs going back to the Kingdom of England before the British monarchs pretty much took over and took control. And we're going to talk about that in a future video as well. Now, you got Article 2. I'm not going to read all of these articles because it's a lot for you to read. I'm just going to go ahead and scroll through. Let's read Article 4. It says, it is agreed that creditors on either side shall meet with no lawful impediment to the recovery of the full value in sterling money of all bona fide debts heretofore contracted. So they're speaking about those British creditors. They should not be left out of them actually recovering any of the debt that those so-called American colonists incurred in regards to their enterprise that was taking place here. So they shouldn't have been stopped. There shouldn't have been anyone being blocked from recovering their debts from both sides because of the war what was taking place. All right. Article 5, which is actually important to know. It says, it is agreed that Congress shall earnestly recommend to the legislature of the respective states to provide for the restitution of all estates, rights, and properties which have been confiscated belonging to real British subjects. And the key word, real British subjects, based off of the 1707 Acts of Union, we know that English as well as Scottish subjects became British subjects. So when they're talking about real British subjects, they're only talking about those two parties. All right. And also of the estates, rights, and properties of persons resident in districts in the possession of His Majesty's arms and who have not borne arms against the United States. And that persons of any other description shall have free liberty to go to any part of or parts of any of the 13 United States, and therein to remain 12 months unmolested in their endeavors to obtain the restitution of such of their estates, rights, and properties as may have been confiscated. So they're telling you that those who have property confiscated during the war could go to any of the original 13 colonies, or in this case 13 states, to recover any of their property that was confiscated during the war. All right. It also says, and that Congress shall also earnestly recommend to the several states a reconsideration and revision of all acts or laws regarding the premises, so as to render the said laws or acts perfectly consistent not only with justice and equity, but with that spirit of conciliation which on the return of the blessings of peace shall universally prevail. And that Congress shall also earnestly recommend to the several states that the estates, rights, and properties of such last mentioned persons shall be restored to them, they refunding to any persons who may be now in possession the bona fide price where any has been given, which such persons may have paid on purchasing any of the said lands, rights, or properties since the confiscation. So they're telling you that anyone who so-called made a purchase of the property of someone else's who owned it before the American Revolution or the war, which we're going to call it, that they have the right to recover it, because the states themselves were supposed to be enacting legislations that allow those parties to be able to recover their property, and those who so-called purchased this property and erroneously either through fraud or some other malicious intent, they can go ahead and recover their monies that they paid for it. All right, and the states themselves are supposed to have created legislation to allow those parties to be able to recover their property. And it says, and it is agreed that all persons who have any interest in confiscated lands, either by debts, marriage settlements, or otherwise, shall meet with no lawful impediment in the prosecution of their just rights. Pause. So this is very, very important, because as us being heirs, and I'm not speaking about the heirs of King George, because clearly he knew himself that they didn't have a claim, and he knew his heirs didn't have a proper claim, and he knew his successors didn't have a proper claim. So we ain't worrying about anybody who come from King George III and after. They not even in the picture when it comes down to this. We're talking about anyone who came before, and anyone who came before will be able to be tracing them as those descendants who can be traced back to the Kingdom of England, going back to the year 927. And we don't even have to go that far, because time immemorial, which is the year 1189, the law only says we only need to go that far. And we can prove that we were over here, whether you want to call us the so-called indigenous people over here, or you want to call us the those folks who so-called migrated over, but we technically didn't migrate over, because as being Berbers, we were always here. And because of the weather anomalies that were taking place on the planet, which we can conclude the Great Deluge, which many different cultures have corroborated that actually did take place in the Great Deluge, we call it the Great Flood, did happen. So if we understand migration patterns, then humans never stayed in one place, period. We always moved. So whether we was on that side of the Atlantic or on this side of Atlantic, it was still considered overseas possessions. All right, and just based off of this treaty alone, it says that anyone who had their property, and we know we did have our property confiscated during the war, we have the right to go to any of the so-called states to be able to recover it. And that's the reason why we say genealogy is the key, because genealogy, you'll be able to use that to tie yourself back to those people who had their property taken. And you can't just lump yourself into the group without being able to prove that that's who you are. That's why you must do your genealogy. If anyone tell you that that's not the right way to go, or it can be altered or whatever, don't listen to these folks. They already had this defeatist mindset, and they're going to hold you back. I'm telling you, because the fact that I've done it myself, I've proven it, I've seen it without a shadow of a doubt, you have to do your genealogy. That's what the United States Supreme Court says. For you to trace yourself back to the group that you say you come from, it must be done via genealogy with prima facie evidence. All right. And let me see what else I want to go through in this treaty before we end this video. And once again, please like, share, subscribe to the channel, brothers and sisters. And for those who think that this treaty is not pertaining to them, if you claim to be a so-called an American citizen, this treaty pertains to you. I repeat, if you claim to be an American citizen, this treaty pertains to you. All right, let's go ahead and read Article 6. It says that there shall be no future confiscations made, nor any prosecutions commenced against any person or persons for, or by reason of, the part which he or they may have taken in the present war, talk about the American Revolution, and that no person shall on that account suffer any future loss or damage, either in his person, liberty, or property, and those who may be in confinement on such charges at the time of the ratification of the treaty in America shall be immediately set at liberty, and the prosecution so commenced be discontinued. So this hasn't happened. I repeat, this hasn't happened. How do I know this hasn't happened? Is because no one even really came to the forefront to let you know who you were when it came down to the people as the descendants of those folks who were part of this war. And until probably now, you didn't even know anything about the 1783 Treaty of Paris. And if you did know anything about it, it probably was vague and you didn't know how it was pertaining to you. And in this case, I'm speaking about property or those who were placed in bondage during the war, even after the war, and had no idea that they had the right to not only be freed, but for them to be able to reclaim all of their property that were taken through the course of the war. So this is the reason why this platform is created, is because as a descendant of those people, it's our obligation and duty to correct the record. And we correct the record by understanding what happened and then being able to interject when need to, and clear up the confusion that many people may have because they know nothing about this time. And not only do they know nothing about this time, but they can't really grasp the concepts and the nature of this information and how it pertains to them in this this day and time, because it does. And then we're going to go ahead and read Article 7. And this is very important for Article 7 for those of you who identify as Negro, Black, or colored. Because of you not knowing this, you've been putting yourself in positions that have not been advantageous for you or us. And it's because of, like I like to say, there has been a hoax, a worldwide hoax played on us. And many nations and countries are involved in this. And they know the only thing it takes is just for us to utilize our intellect, our brains, start utilizing our rational thought, rational mind to put the pieces together instead of being so emotional all the time. And so as long as our people are emotional, they won't grasp this information, and then they will always continue trying to find themselves as being a victim and don't realize that your ancestors weren't just so-called victims. A lot of them were the invaders. A lot of them were the persecutors, enemy, whatever. And we all became mixed up. Like I said, the blood became mixed up because of the inbreeding, marriages, whatever. But it's about what you do with what you have today is what's going to determine the future. Like they said, the deeds of you today is what's going to matter moving forward. All right, so let's go ahead and read it. And it says, there shall be a firm and perpetual peace between his Britannic Majesty and the said states. So as you see, we're supposed to be in peace. And between the subjects of the one, that is those British subjects, aka English nationals and Scottish nationals, but we're speaking specifically, I'm talking about us as English nationals, and the citizens of the other, that'll be the citizens of the states or the citizens of the United States. Wherefore all hostilities both by sea and land shall from henceforth cease. So there should be no fighting, no banging whatsoever from both of us. All prisoners on both sides shall be set at liberty. We know this ain't take place because a lot of the heirs who are the descendants of those prisoners of war didn't even know that they're actually been underneath occupation mentally, because they don't know that they come from these folks who was placed as prisoners of the war because of the side they chose to fight for. Either they were considered loyalists, and 9 times out of 10, if they were loyalists and they were still over here, they probably became either placed more in bondage or they got rid of you. All right. It says, so yeah, all prisoners on both sides should be set at liberty, and his Britannic Majesty shall, with all convenient speed and without causing any destruction or carrying away any Negroes. Now we know from the 1740 South Carolina Negro Act, Negro mean Berbers. So Negro, Berbers, synonymous, because Negro is just a description of the people. Berber is the noun of who they are. So carrying away any Negro / Berbers or other property of the American inhabitants. So as you see, they were claiming the Berbers as property, and a lot of the so-called Americans who were considered the colonists were claiming us to be their property. And this wasn't just the Americans, it was many different other nations and countries and people over here. And even so-called quote-unquote melanated or Negroes or black people or free men or free people of color were also were owning chattel property, aka slaves. So like I said, once you start removing the veil and start accepting the truth for what it was, you will see that we played both sides of the field. It wasn't just one. Okay, let's continue. And so it says, American inhabitants withdrew all his armies, garrisons, and fleets from the said United States, and from every post, place, and harbor within the same, leaving in all fortifications the American artillery that may be therein, and shall also order and cause all archives, records, deeds, and papers belonging to any of the said states or their citizens, which in the course of the war may have fallen into the hands of his officers, to be forthwith restored and delivered to the proper states and persons to whom they belong. All right, so that's pretty much, once again, property. Anything that dealt with property should have been returned to their so-called owners. Okay, and once again, as I'm telling you, those of you who claim to be Negroes, aka black, you're truly the ancient Berbers. Go take a look at the 1740 South Carolina Negro Act. This was passed underneath the auspices of King George II, who's the father of who? King George III. So pay attention. It says Article 8. The navigation of the river Mississippi from its source to the ocean shall forever remain free and open to the subjects of Great Britain and the citizens of the United States. That's Article 8. So as you can see, those of us who are descendants from that kingdom, or those kingdoms supposed to have technically forever, which means perpetual access to the Mississippi River. And many people want to claim, want to say the Mississippi River is similar to the Nile River. And, it is what it is. And the last part I'm going to read, like I said, download this for yourself. Keep it, save it, understand it, comprehend it, because now you are the successors to this instrument. Okay? And it says, Article 9, in case it should so happen that any place or territory belonging to Great Britain, remember, any territory that belonging to Great Britain, that means the 13 colonies, which they call the Eastern Seaboard, as well the property that France gave up via the 1763 Royal Proclamation, or the 1763 Treaty of Paris, which was passed during that time as well, and then the property that Spain gave over to Great Britain. So this is all of their territories, and that's not even including the overseas possessions over there in what we call Europe, or the territories in the Caribbean islands, what they call the West Indies or whatever. But they're speaking, pay attention, it says all territory belongs to Great Britain, and now understand, or to the United States, because now you see Great Britain granted land to the United States. So they're granting. But because he granted it to you doesn't mean that those who were actually there originally, who had owned property, lose their rights. You maintain that. And we already read that. But let's continue. So it says, shall have been conquered by arms of either from the other. So let me read it. In case it should be so happen that any place or territory belonging to Great Britain or to the United States shall have been conquered by the arms of either from the other before the arrival of the said provisional articles in America, it is agreed that the same shall be restored without difficulty and without requiring any compensation. So they're saying that any land that was taken prior to the this Treaty of Paris, and they're talking about the agreed land, it's all supposed to be restored without any compensation. Give it back. We ain't paying you for it. Just give it back. All right. And the last article, and we're going to wrap this up, says Article 10, the solemn ratifications of the present treaty expedited in good and due form shall be exchanged between the contracting parties in the space of 6 months or sooner, if possible, to be computed from the date of the signatures of the present treaty, in witness whereof we, the undersigned, their ministers plenipotentiary, have in their name and in virtue of all full power signed with our hands the present definitive treaty, and cause the seals of our arms to be affixed thereto. Done at Paris this 3rd day of September in the year of our Lord 1783. And it shows the 4 parties who signed it underneath, either as constituents for Great Britain or constituents for the United States. So there you have it, brothers and sisters. As we got a chance to see a quick summary from the video in regards to the Treaty of Paris, and now you yourself get to see the document itself, that this is what breathed life into the United States and the several states to be able to exist as independent, quote-unquote, sovereign states themselves. So with that being said, stay tuned. Don't forget, once again, like, share, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you visit the Third Temple English Church of England. Like, share, subscribe to those videos. Hopefully they will bring you up to the proper speed that you need to, because we are in a state of emergency. This is a distress call. We're looking for our people, our long lost heirs. And if you can understand what it is that we're saying, you should be able to put yourself in the proper mindset in regards to knowing what it is that you're supposed to be doing next. And the goal for you to supposed to be doing next is be those people, practice their religion, their customs, their culture, their law. And if that's the case, you should find us at the Third Temple English Church of England, for therefore you be able to be amongst your kinfolk, those who've been waiting for you to be able to come home, so therefore you can inherit what was always yours. All right? Peace.